I'm live here, and I'm just special on a Saturday afternoon. I want to do a question and answer session on women submitting to their husbands and husbands sanctifying their wives. Okay, a lot of questions, a lot of good questions. Some stirred up feminists too, and that's okay. But I don't want to continue with this yet until I tried this a couple of hours ago and my sound wasn't working. So I'm going to wait until some people get on, and as soon as I get some comments, if you want to make a comment, go ahead and do that. Because I want to answer a lot of the questions that people have. A lot of it has to do with abuse. You know, do I need to honor and submit to my husband even though he's abusive to me? Or what if my husband asks me to do things that I don't believe I should do, or they go contrary to Scripture? These are the kind of questions that I believe that need to be answered. Okay, I can see somebody can hear me. I'm going to wait a couple minutes and just kind of talk about some things until I see that more people can come on and that they can ask me questions concerning the biblical role of being submissive and the biblical role of loving your wife as Christ loves the church. Let me just begin by saying this, that God is the one that designed marriage. Okay, He created it. And it generally goes to three different stages. He had an idea in mind, a blueprint for marriage. Okay, well, that blueprint got marred at the fall. So you went from the ideal to now creating an ordeal where now most people want a new deal. Okay, the ideal got messed up. God created Adam, He created Eve as a helpmeet, and when they sinned and disobeyed God, that messed that picture all up. So what happened? They entered into the world out of the garden, and their marriage was faulty. And God designed Eve to complement Adam, not compete with Adam. And He designed Adam to sanctify his wife, to set her apart, to make her holy. It didn't go very well. In fact, their first son was a murderer. Okay, and all through history we see that God's plan for people got messed up. The blueprint got messed up. So He had to make provisions. Okay, you even say with Moses, and when they were questioning Jesus, can we divorce our wives? And Jesus responded, it wasn't that way from the beginning. But because of the hardness of your hearts, and there's the crux of the matter, the hardness of hearts is why wives and husbands, for the most part, get divorced. Okay? Now, there's two ways of looking at this. Proactive and reactive. Okay? If you understand the biblical story of marriage and family, then it would be wise to be very proactive, okay, to recognize what all is involved. And I see it all the time. People will spend enormous amount of money on a wedding. And I've seen where they just recently showed one on TV with millions of dollars for a wedding, but they don't spend $100 for marital counseling or what's involved in a marriage. It'd have been better off if they'd have spent that time in learning about marriage from a biblical perspective and saved money that they spent on the wedding so they could use it for their family and other purposes. But you have a lot of people entering into relationships totally unprepared. And when things don't go well, the honeymoon's over, right away they start looking at faults. And it goes both ways. There's a lot of different perspectives here. Okay, you have the perspective of men. In fact, there's a word here that I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called uxorious. Uxorious. You know what an uxorious man is? An uxorious man is a man that's overly devoted to his wife, to the point where he's a wallflower. Okay? It's usually looked at in a negative sense, and he looks very weak. He's overly submissive to the desires of his wife, where she controls him. You women want to be married to somebody like that? Huh? You want somebody like that in your idea? Okay. Again, that's called uxorious men. And there's a lot of them in America today. They've been emasculated. What is a man's man? Okay? And so these are kind of the questions that I like to address here. So if you want to type any question for me in the comment section, go ahead and do it, and I'll be glad to answer. But let me just say this. The world feminist movement has really made the idea of a woman being submissive a very negative thing. In fact, I was looking, and here's a list of something. They say that she is nothing but a follower. She's going to end up developing passive-aggressive behavior. She's going to be an enabler. She's going to justify her partner's behavior no matter what it is. She ends up being codependent. She has low self-esteem. She superficially acts. She's not really real. She has great insecurities. That's what the world says about a submissive woman. Okay, you've seen recently when this football player talked about wives staying at home and taking care of their family, which is a very noble job. You saw how he was attacked? Yeah, that's what happens. And that's not what a submissive woman is. Okay, a woman that's submissive, there's two ways of looking at this. Let me go both ways. You gotta remember what I said: proactive and reactive. Okay, proactive is you understand marriage, you understand what's involved, you found this person you're going to marry, you know what you're both getting into. Okay, and if he understands his role as a person that should love his wife as Christ loves the church, which involves a whole lot of different things rather than just dying. Okay, it involves leading her with the word, it involves guidance. But this is a woman who can put her trust in him to make the best decisions, not only for her, but for her family. She's investing in him, okay, to do that. You're going to guide me, and you're going to guide my family, and you're going to take me places that I never dreamed of, okay? I have faith in the process because God mandated it, okay? He brought you to me, and you're the best person for me. I know you're not perfect, neither am I. You got flaws, so do I. You got strengths and weaknesses, so do I. We'll help each other. And she's able to put her trust in it, and he's able to guide her as he's being led by God and his word. Okay, so that is more proactive. And you got reactive. Somebody got married, they got infatuated, or who knows what reason that led them. Maybe he had some money, maybe she was good looking, maybe she just wanted to get out of the house. All the reasons that I mentioned other time. So what happened? They got married. Totally unprepared. A year goes by, 2 years, he's developing a drinking problem. Not only that, but he's hanging out with his buddies. He's coming home late at night. Sometimes he doesn't come home at all. And you're wanting to please and honor God. Now he's into gambling. He's losing his job, re-got his job, lost another job, going in debt. He starts getting angry with you. He starts finding fault with you and everything that you're doing. You can't seem to please him no matter what you do. And even the times you try, he doesn't acknowledge it. What do you think happens? All of a sudden, then, some other guy comes along and starts paying her some attention. As you read stories like this all the time. Now she's in a reactive position. And my question to this woman is this. How much do you want to win him back into the Lord? Okay? How much do you want to win him? Okay? And that's more reactive. Now, people have asked me, well, what if he asked me to do something that I shouldn't do that's unbiblical? Well, the answer to that is really plain. We always honor God in his word first. If he crosses that line, and asks you to do something that's unbiblical, obviously the answer is no. However, that being said, there's a lot of gray area. Not everything's black and white in the Bible. Okay? There is a lot of gray area. And you have what's called amoral issues and moral issues. You have to be the one to determine whether your husband and yours values are the same. Paul talks about this. He says if what I do causes my brother to stumble, I won't do it anymore. I want to do the things that build up. But let's say that they're selfish, or some people address are narcissistic, self-centered. All they think about is themselves. How do you live in a relationship like that? If you're a wife. Again, the bottom line is, how much do you want to win him and be pleasing to God? How much do you want to win him and pleasing to God? Is he worth fighting for? Or you want to leave that relationship and go look for something else? See, these are hard questions when you get involved in relationship. That's why I'm so I tell young people, I especially tell them, you know what? You need to be really concerned about who you end up dating. You don't want to get emotionally attached to someone that you're not going to end up with. I had that happen to 2 friends of mine. Real good friends. I've seen a lot of good friends of mine divorced and messed up with bad women. I'm talking about Jezebel type women. The kind of women that you would rather live on the corner of a roof than with. I had one friend of mine, he was engaged to Miss Arizona. Miss Arizona. And this is a good man. He was a godly man. I used to play soccer with him in college. And after about a year of being with her, and they were engaged and everything, he decided to call off the engagement. And I asked him why. He says, because she'll never listen. She's too self-centered. She's too caught up in the world. I'll never be able to do ministry and missions with this kind of a woman. So they broke up. She was a beautiful woman. You know what happened? He met this girl out in eastern Colorado, country girl. They got married and had some great kids, and he went in ministry, ended up in missions overseas. And another good friend of mine who married Miss Colorado. And he told me one day, he says, man, he says, I don't know what to do with this woman of mine. You know, all we do is argue and fight. And so finally he said one day he was kind of leaning up over the sink, cleaning up some dishes, and God impressed upon him this thought. I gave this woman to you because you're the only one that can help clean her up, to present her to me the way I want her to be. And right away, his whole attitude changed. And then he did that. Okay, so there's a lot of different perspectives. And then a lot of women, depending on where they are, it's very difficult to them to be submissive. They don't know what that picture looks like. Let me give you a little example of what that was. A wife can show submission by supporting her husband in his goals and aspirations. Okay? This can include encouraging him to pursue his passions. Say a guy wants to do something, and it's going to take a lot of sacrifice. You know, you've seen the story of Rocky, okay? And you have at first, he marries this girl, and at first, you know, she was very reluctant for him to get in the ring and all that, but yet that was his passion. And what was it doing? It was tearing him down. He wanted to do this so bad, and she just kept, but all she kept thinking about, I'm going to lose you, and you're not going to be good at me, you're going to get hurt, and all this. And he was trying to please her. And it was ruining him. Until she finally said, go get him, go knock him out. And that's when he rose. That's the first story of Rocky. Many men have succeeded and done really well because they had encouraging, supportive wives that helped them, pushed them towards their passion and their desire. And I know many men who have been pulled away from it, more so today than ever before. You know? Isn't that sad? So help him include offering to help with his work projects, or simply listening to him when he needs to vent. Especially Italian men, or men that are athletes, you know, or that are engaged in combat in the military or in armed forces or with military policemen, firemen that have stressful jobs and they come home full of all that. You know, leave them alone for a minute. Let them sit down and relax. Then let them vent. That's how a wife can be submissive, encouraging. You know, instead of just, you know, all you do is work. You don't care about me. Well, the reason I'm working is protect and provide for you. Yeah, but you don't spend enough time with me. You know, whose interest is she doing? She's not being the sacrificial, submissive wife. She's being the wife that's demanding. You know, she's not being sensitive to his needs. A submissive wife is not a wallflower. She's one that believes in her husband. She believes in his calling. She believes that he is something like nobody or nothing else. She says, help me. She exemplifies that agape love that God created her for. That's what a submissive wife looks like. It's respecting your husband's point of view. That doesn't mean that he doesn't listen to you. Trust me, he does. He listens to you, but it's respecting his point of view, even though you don't agree with it. How many wives have done their husbands really, really good by giving them great advice at the right time? And how many wives have done their husbands wrong by undermining them when they should have been supporting them? You know, there's one story in the Bible that I really like. And I think it's really encouraging and faithful for women to read about. Because you got to understand something about the sovereignty of God in a marriage relationship. God is sovereign still. He's in control. You have the story of Nabal and Abigail. Okay, Nabal was a bad, ruthless, narcissistic of a man. Okay? And David came along one day with all his men, and he sent a messenger ahead to Nabal to get some supplies for his men. And instead, as the Bible tells us the story, Nabal put down David, made no provisions for him, and in essence enraged David so much so and disrespected him to the point where David was getting his men together and go and kill him. Except for Abigail. When Abigail was a great godly, she was submissive to this ruthless, brutal bully of a man. And he's there drinking and partying with all his friends and saying and all this. You know what she did? She gathered up some supplies and she loaded them all up and ran out and met David and his men before they got to her house. And then she told David, "Forgive my husband, he's a fool." She intervened and saved her husband's life for the moment, but she was submissive to him. Okay, what happened? The next morning, when Nabal found out what his wife had did, it so shocked him he fell over and dropped dead. God rescued Abigail out of that marriage because he's sovereign. She wasn't looking to get out of the marriage. She was looking to save her marriage and save her people and her family, even though this man was ruthless. And God intervened. That's faith, people. So you got all these women, I want to get out of my marriage. Fine, go do it. Go ahead. Go to the other side of the street. Think if it's better. You know what generally happens? They end up marrying the same kind of man. You know? On the rebound. See, God is involved. He sees everything. I can tell you a story. I remember this man when I first got saved. My aunt was telling me the story. This man was trying to love his wife, but she was a Jezebel of Jezebels. You know, and she kept running around and spending money and doing all kind of things and wouldn't listen to him and so forth. And about a month later, she was killed in an automobile accident. God took her out of his life. God does that with divorce too. Sometimes, and it can happen both ways. I've seen it where women are so obstinate with their husbands that they begin to listen to voices from their friends or other kind of authority figures other than their own husbands, and that advice leads them to do things they wouldn't normally do because they came out from under his guidance and protection, and next thing you know, they're all screwed up. I know one woman who was the wife of a president of a Bible college. She went running around, hanging out with her social friends, and they kept telling her, "You're missing out on life. Why you hang around with this fundamental Bible-toting Christian? You know, you're missing out on all this fun." They ended up getting divorced. And she gave up her daughters Years later, I was there at the reunion. She came and asked forgiveness for everybody after she went and made a fool of herself for years. Would you forgive me for what I did? You know, these sort of things happen. It's my grandmother. Okay? I call her Nonna. She never spoke a word of English. My grandfather gave my grandmother syphilis. Yeah. Venereal disease. In fact, when she gave birth to one of her daughters, that syphilis passed on to her baby. My grandfather was a drunkard. He's a hard worker, don't get me wrong. He made a lot of money. He was also a gambler, had a lot of mistresses. My grandmother was a devout Christian woman. She could have left, but she decided that she was going to fight for her husband and for her family. And I remember, because I was a little boy, I remember her crying and praying and I mean, she would pray in Spanish. And I remember listening to her, and tears would be rolling, and how she would be crying that God would save her husband. She raised 3 of the most godly daughters that all married pastors. And all her children became very successful. And eventually, her husband came to know the Lord. He was already by that time pretty messed up because he smoked and drank a lot. He was ridden with cancer. And my grandmother came to live with my dad and my mom and died while she was at their home. But she paid the price, man. People, you have no idea. I remember when my grandfather died in that house in San Fernando Street in San Antonio, Texas, down on the west side. So many people were there. And my grandmother was in her bedroom crying her heart out because she lost her husband whom she loved in spite of what all he did. And I remember because she had diabetes, they were rubbing alcohol all over to keep her cool. They were real concerned for her. And eventually she came out of it, and God blessed her. And oh man, what a reward and treasure she's going to have in heaven. What if she'd have left? See, women right today, they're so willing to bail out. Now, I know some situations are just flat out deadly. I mean, hardly a day that goes by that you don't hear of a spouse killing his wife. Okay? Or vice versa. You have wives killing their husbands or hiring hitmen. You know, things have gotten so out of hand. My advice at points like that is separate and try to work towards some kind of reconciliation. You know, but you never want to stay in a dangerous situation. Okay? Now, there are some women that will set up a dangerous situation just so it makes it look like you are the attacker and she's the victim. We have a lot of that now. And of course, God sees through all that. He's sovereign. He knows what's really going on in the heart of men and women. You know? And he's going to bring justice and bring it out right. Okay, anybody got any questions for me? Any questions at all for me? Okay, well, look, I've addressed a couple things. There's proactive and reactive. Proactive is get to know what you're getting into. Understand the biblical model for marriage and family. Understand what the role of submission really is. It's the idea of women getting more Christ-like. Men, understand what your role is as a sanctifier. You're to help your wife get ready to be presented to Christ as his bride. Okay? You do that by sharing the word with her, by living a life full of integrity. Integrity means not perfection. A lot of women say, well, yeah, but look what you did. And they have a tendency to remember everything. And it comes out at the worst time. Yeah, but all you have to do at that moment is say, hey, I ask you to forgive me. And Jesus said, there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. That was yesterday. This is today. And today we're going to do this. End of the matter. She wants to persist in it, that's her problem. You take it to God. I always say, take it to God. God, look what she's doing. She won't forgive. She's harboring bitterness. Do something about it. God is sovereign in that. See, it's two becoming one. But who's the one at the apex? It's the Lord Jesus Christ. He's more concerned about your marriage than you are. Now, sometimes it comes to a point where they say, oh, they're irreconcilable. No, you know what the Bible calls that? Hardness of hearts. And Jesus says it wasn't that way at the beginning. So I'm going to end this now just by saying this. Look. Because a lot of people were sending me messages. You know. I'm going to submit to somebody unless he's godly and he's walking and he's doing all that. Well, fine, go look for somebody like that. If you think you can find somebody like that, it's perfect. Not going to happen. Even your best of marriages, the most strongest of Christians, have their problems. Okay? Women, because of the emotional dilemma they're in, because of the curse, and men, because of thistles and thorns and the frustrations that come in their everyday life. It's built in. There's only one way to overcome that. One woman got on the thing and she says, no, we're not to be a servant. We shouldn't be a... Hey, what did Jesus demonstrate about greatness? He took off his towel, which was his rank, and he began to wash the disciples' feet. What was his point? Foot washing as a practice? No. He was talking about how to be great in the kingdom. That was their argument at the moment. How do you be great in the kingdom? By being a servant and a slave to others. It's what you call a bondservant. I'm your willful slave. Because I want to help you. I want to help you mature. I want to help you to grow. I want to help you to become something different. Something Christ-likeness. Something that Lord Jesus can present for all eternity to see. Of course it's hard. Of course it's difficult. Then you got other problems that come in too. You got sicknesses. You got accidents. You got wars. You got disease. And you got politicians. You got distractions and temptations. And you got the devil who wants to disrupt all your life and attack the basic unit of society, which is the family. And he's doing a really good job of it. Again, how much are you willing to fight for? How much you really love your family? You want to be an Abigail? You want to be a Jezebel? You know? You want to be a David? Joshua? A Moses? You want to be a Peter or Paul? A Stephen? A Gideon? And Gideon was a coward. But you know what? God found him in that cave and he says, Gideon, thy mighty man of valor. God didn't see Gideon as he was, but what he could potentially become. And that's what a good submissive wife does for her husband. She sees in him what he can become, and he sees in her what she can become. When they fulfill their God-given roles and do the things that God has called them to do. That's it for now. God bless you all.